Hello.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Avner. Welcome.
Hello, Barnaby, and what a pleasure to meet you.
Yes, absolutely, equally. I'm just going to switch off the sound on the other side. There we go. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I can see there's a few people connected already, which is amazing. I'm using a different platform from normal this week, trying YouTube and seeing how that goes. I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to see all your comments. So let's test it. Say hi in the comments. Let us know you're here. Let us know where you are, and we will say hello to you.
Will we see their names? I wonder if any friends are coming.
I think they may. If we can't see your names, you may have to write your names into the comments so that we know who you are. Maybe let us know what part of the world you are tuning in from today.
I'm backwards.
Yeah, that's odd, isn't it?
It is.
Epi Floyd. Do you know Epi Floyd, Avner?
I do not.
Oh, it's Lee.
Which Lee?
He's a friend of mine from England, from Lancashire. Good old Lancashire. Avner, when was the last time you were in the UK? Or when are you going back?
The last time I was outside. It's actually in the UK. It's been a while. I can't remember. I'd have to look it up.
Right.
It's been a few years. Maybe at Glastonbury. I'm not sure.
A few years ago, that would have been.
Yeah, or possibly. Hello, Carlo.
Carlo Daniels. Hello. From Cape Town. Do you know him, Avner?
No.
No.
I'm happy to meet people.
Yes, it's wonderful. Yeah, say hello. So we've got, Clown Pluck. Greetings from Gouda, the Netherlands. It's Marlene. Hi, Marlene. Great to have you on. Deborah Catfish. She's one of my regulars. She likes catfish. She once caught a very large one.
Oh, hi, Mitch.
Greetings temporarily from Austria, from
Yeah.
Mitch Mitchelson.
Mitch is brilliant.
Is he a friend, a colleague?
The Mime Festival in London. A couple times.
Fantastic. Well, it's very exciting to have you on Conversations, Avner. I have to admit to, having sort of fan celebrity nervousness, because, you are a kind of one of those beacons.
Oh, dear.
Sorry to break it to you. But you are in this clown stratosphere. You're a great inspiration, and you're somebody who a lot of people know and look up to and respect, and for a long time now. So it's really, really wonderful to meet you.
Likewise.
And to be able to ask you a few questions and dig into your clown knowledge. So I do have some questions from folks that they've already put on the Facebook group, and I'll be drawing from those. If anybody has any questions, this is your chance. Throw them onto the comments, and I will put them into this conversation with Avner. Now, Avner, I would like to start with a question before everyone else gets in. And my fascination often is with how people get attracted and realize that they are clowns, or that they are meant to be on the stage in this kind of clown way in the first place. Like, what was your journey? Like, how did clown call to you, or did you come into contact with clown and realize this journey was yours?
When I was a gymnast in high school. Not a very good one, but that was okay because we didn't have a team. And I learned to juggle when I was 12 years old at from Hovey Burgess, by the way.
Oh, wow.
You may know.
Yeah.
The reason we all juggle today.
Right.
He was I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to think. When I was at college, I was actually studying chemistry and biology, and my best friend from high school came to visit. I was in New Orleans. I'd gotten interested in theater. Okay, now I'm getting there. I was walking across campus one day and got caught in a thunderstorm, And the building that I went into happened to be the theater. They were having auditions for a play, and I got a part. And
that can't be true.
it's absolutely true.
You didn't mean to audition. You just kind of found yourself there and thought,
yeah,
oh, what the heck?
I ran into a kid I knew from the dorm, and he told me what was going on. I'd never really seen any plays. Anyhow, I got a part. And when my friend came to visit, that led to another part, which was seminal. It was by Johnny Simons, who is the founder and director of the Hip Pocket Theater in Fort Worth, and one of the first mimes in America. Now, this was in 1967. So mime was a pretty unknown thing. Marceau was about it, really.
Yeah.
And Johnny had studied mime from a dance standpoint, and did a commedia dell'arte production of Pinocchio. And the stage manager of the play that I didn't even get on stage in that first play. It was an updated version of The Mandrake by Machiavelli. And I played a heckler in the audience.
Right.
The stage manager was stage managing this commedia show. So I went down and tried out for that and got a part. My friend came to visit. We saw some kids fire eating and tap dancing on the streets in New Orleans. Those were the only street performers. And we decided to go out. We both knew how to juggle. We didn't have any juggling props. We juggled fruit. And that was the very beginning. I came home for the summer and I was asked to do a birthday party for my sister and one of her friends. I was asked to do a little show for a Jewish charitable organization. And I was starting to do mime. I'd gotten interested in theater, and I thought I should grow a beard if I was going to be in theater. I'm sure you understand. Yeah. And the white face just looked horrible. So I started looking around, and I discovered the tramp clown look, which was perfect. I already looked like a hobo. And that was the beginning. So I had basically a mime show, but I also did some juggling, some acrobatics, and a little bit of magic, although that came much later. But that was the beginning.
That's very interesting. So there was a kind of like a lot of people I've spoken to, there's a kind of destiny, a sort of a bit of accidental, things that happen a little bit accidentally that leads you into this world. Yeah.
I was interviewed recently by someone for a thesis, and it was all about following your dream. Mm-hmm. And I said, "Oh, I think that's a bad idea." She was shocked. She said, "Why?" I said, "Well, because nobody ends up doing what they thought they were going to do, except for the kid in 5th grade who knew he was going to be a doctor, and he was." But nobody else ends up doing what they think they want to do. Better to find things that you're passionate about and do them obsessively. So I was just going from gig to gig. It turns out I was climbing this ladder that eventually led to Broadway. But I didn't know that. I didn't even know I was on a ladder. I was just going from gig to gig. And I think it's often that way. You do something for a long time and you look back and realize that you've had a career.
And the skills kind of just, I presume they just kind of accumulated over time, over repetition.
That was my interest, was acrobatics and juggling. So most of the material in my show came from those skills. When I was my last year of college, because I took too many courses and paid by parking tickets. And I had seen Marceau somewhere along the way. I was still thinking of myself as a mime. I went out at this was at the University of Washington. I went to 4 different universities. I started, as I said, chemistry and biology at Tulane. I went to Atlanta, Georgia State University, and then to NYU, and then to Seattle, to the University of Washington, where I was a full-blown theater major and didn't know what to do. And I'd always wanted to visit Europe. And I thought, well, I'll go study mime with Marceau. This was pre-internet. I could not find Marceau's address in the phone book. And when I was at New York University, I was technically a production management student. And Lecoq came to do a lecture demonstration. So I was in the technical side of things and doing some independent studies in clowning. So they assigned me to do the lighting and technical liaison. And Madame Lecoq gave me their card, which somehow I didn't lose. When I couldn't get a hold of Marceau, I thought, well, heck, one mime school is as good as another. So I applied to the Lecoq School and was accepted for a 3-month audition period. And I got there and, oh my God, they weren't teaching. I wanted to walk into the wind and go like this. And they were doing what Lecoq did. I was a big complainer. But I think about a month before the end of that period, I realized how really important his work was, and so much more that the mime illusions were tricks. And as I thought back on it years later, I realized that the reason for me that Marceau was so effective is that he was doing magic tricks. People were, well, there's no wall there. How's he doing that? It was as good in its day as David Copperfield making the Statue of Liberty disappear. So I stopped complaining and started praying, and luckily was accepted back for the rest of the first year and then finished the school.
And clown comes right at the end, right?
Clown in those days, I don't know where it is now. It was the last thing in the second year. Yeah.
And was that a magic moment for you when you discovered the clown, or was it all kind of? Oh
God, no. If we'd had a yearbook, I'd have been least likely to succeed and make a living as a clown easily, which is probably a good attitude.
Yeah. Failure.
Well, I used to think of it that way. I don't really look at it that way anymore. I'm not a big fan of failure. In fact, I think when people are developing clown numbers, I mean, one of the principles is that you don't have to demonstrate failure.
Can you explain what you mean by that? What do you feel like that's a problem, that people are too focused on failure then?
Absolutely. Yeah. And they've gotten focused on this idea of the flop, la bide, Lecoq called it. And I think for too many people, it stops there. They go, well, I failed, so it must be a success. But it's not that you failed. It's that when you fail, how you save the show, how you resurrect. So for me, everything that we do on stage is a problem to be solved. And there's a little structure. And the most important part of that is, once you recognize the problem, is that you find it interesting. Not that you panic, not that you get frustrated, not that you get angry, but that you go, interesting. And because from that psychological standpoint, you can come up with a solution.
Curiosity.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I mean, I was watching rewatching your kind of seminal slack rope routine recently, you know, and it's just, if anything could be perfect, that routine is. I don't know.
I mean, it's like history. It's just one damn thing after another.
Yeah, of course.
But if you look at it again in terms of problem solving, every little number in that big number is a little problem to be solved, and it follows the structure that you see the problem. And breath, by the way, which was something I really took away from the Lecoq school, and an understanding of breath, it stops you. And then you find it interesting, and that's an exhalation. An exhalation is a relaxation, a détente. When you inhale and stop, your body is going into freeze, fight, or flight.
Mm-hmm.
And that plays havoc with the audience's emotions if you're in rapport with the audience, which is a whole other subject. You find the problem interesting, and then you think to yourself, oh, I know how to solve this. And that's what sets the hook in the mind of the audience. When you go, oh, and that's an inhale. I know how to do this. And then you do it. And if it solves a problem, you are satisfied. If it doesn't solve the problem, you just go back a step and go, wow, this is even more interesting than I thought.
Yeah.
So for me, clowning is all about success and finding things interesting. And by the way, that's the perfect response to any problem. It's great for relationships. It's great for raising children. And it's great for clowning.
I'm glad you said that about raising children, because that's...
Whatever they say to you. Can I have ice cream before dinner? Your tendency is to get angry. No. But what if instead you go, interesting. When we first discovered this, my wife, Julie, and I taught at the barn for over 30 years together and really developed this pedagogy and these eccentric principles. We started calling it eccentric because clown has become such a 4-letter word. It's always mime if you think about it. Our son, who was about 10 at the time and grew up at the workshop, he was sitting at the table after dinner one night doing origami. And I said, Zeb, should you be upstairs doing homework? And he looked at me and went, interesting. It's automatically funny. When catches himself on that clock on the face of the building. He looks up, he looks down. Interesting.
Yeah.
And from there, he can solve the problem.
I love it. I mean, you see that, now you say that, we see that in all the classics, in Laurel and Hardy and Buster Keaton and Chaplin, that like...
Absolutely. When you go back, once you know it, it's like a secret technique. And you go back and look at it and go, oh, yeah. That's all he's doing is solving problems.
De Castro, Angela, do you know Angela De Castro in the UK?
Yeah. I love Angela.
I had one of these conversations with her a few weeks ago, and she has a course which is called I think it's called The Intelligence of the Clown. And so she's saying very much what you're saying, that it's about clowns aren't stupid. They are actually curious, intelligent. And once you start to engage that side of your brain, that problem solving side of your brain, you're thinking more like a clown. So I love that idea. Wonderful. So I guess I should, I could just talk to you all day, but I should squeeze in a few of these amazing questions that people have asked. Pan from Sweden said, oh, and by the way, these are questions that were written on Facebook beforehand, but if anybody has questions that they want to put in on the comments now, then please do. Oh yes, Carlo, should we start with that one?
We can. So
look at that.
I have actually, I'll show you a handout from my course. By the way, I have courses. You can find them on the registration just opened.
Yeah, you've got tons of courses coming up. I saw that.
They're 6 weeks long. Each one is once a week for 2 hours for 6 weeks, and there are only 12 people accepted. So this starts to answer Carlo's question, which is, how does clowning relate to theater, acting, playing in a dramatic theater using clown technique? So I put this together. Is this backwards or forwards? Can you read it?
It's a bit blurry. Hold it closer. I'm going to actually make you full. Hang on. That didn't do it. I want to make you full
Just
size.
tell you, it's not that interesting.
There. Hold it up again. Yeah. Elements of performance.
Yeah.
Clowning, skills, story.
Yeah, but it starts at the bottom. The very first thing, and there are techniques for this, to create rapport with the audience. And if you're in clowning, you are with the audience. The same techniques work absolutely perfectly with your partner, and also establishing rapport with the environment, with the props. That's the first thing. That has to be there. Otherwise, the audience isn't participating in the performance. Lecoq has a great quote that we don't clown for people, we clown with them.
Yeah.
And what that means, and there are things that we can demonstrate this and then learn the techniques of rapport, is when the audience is feeling what you're feeling, you the clown. So that when you're happy about something, they feel that joy. When you're finding something interesting, they're also interested. The next thing is story. You have to have you can't just go on stage and look around and hope you find something. You come on stage with a clear expectation. Now, this is all very familiar. Carlo asked the question. This would be your objective in acting. You come on stage to do something.
Yeah.
Even if you're the housekeeper and your job is to clean up the room, that's your objective. The next, and these are nested.
Yeah.
There it is. Our skills. Everybody comes with their own unique set of skills and talents. It may be storytelling. It may be juggling. If you're a juggler, you may clean up the room in a way that an ordinary person wouldn't. If you're a balancer, you might do that. If you're a storyteller, if you're an efficiency expert, whatever your skills are, those come in. And then we get to the last bit, which is the idea, which kicks into where I consider clowning to live. That when you do things that evoke the response of the audience, wow. And variations on that. Wow, how did you do that? Wow, do that again. What we don't want is the audience going, well, I could do that.
Right.
And what we really don't want, and this is for the non sequitur kinds of clowns, we don't want the audience going, huh? Why'd you do that?
Yeah.
We
Confusion.
want the audience to go, wow. So in learning clowning, we start collecting little tiny moments of doing ordinary things in extraordinary ways, even tying your shoe. There's a wonderful example of one of my closest friends and former student, Iman Lizarazu, and you can see some of her show on the directing page on my website. She had a partner show where she has to change shoes to do a flamenco number, and she needs hard soles. And she used to put her shoes on and then bend over and tie them. And it was boring because the audience looks at it and goes, mon frère Albert peut faire ça. That's a funny story, by the way. Mon frère Albert peut faire ça. John Flax told me that John's the director of Theater Grotesco and a Lecoq student a few years after me, that if somebody did something pedestrian or ordinary, Lecoq would say, mon frère Albert peut faire ça. That means my brother Albert could do that.
Right.
Well, I was visiting in Paris and I had lunch with Madame Lecoq. And I said, I don't remember this mon frère Albert. She said, I don't know what that's all about. He didn't have a brother Albert.
It sounded good.
So we discovered something that you can find on YouTube. If I had a shoe, I'd show it to you. It's called a 2-second shoe tie. And you just go, wow, when you see people do it. So Iman, who's also a classically trained ballet dancer, would put the shoes on, jump in the air, land in the splits, and then just bend over and it's done.
Beautiful.
And then And it gets an applause now instead of going, oh yeah, she tied her shoes. So we're really looking, and so to answer Carlo's question, until when you've got the rapport, the story, the skills, that's just theater. And when the techniques that you're using evoke this feeling of wow, then it kicks into clowning. Wow. And I have to say one thing. I don't use the word clown. As I mentioned before, only half in jest that clown is my favorite 4-letter word. There's a lot of baggage that comes with clown. I was with a group of students. We went to the gala show at a clown congress. And after the show, we were talking, and I said, so what'd you guys think? And the consensus was there were a lot of clowns in the show, but not very much clowning. And I realized that the clowns that I admire, that I worship, if you will, Keaton, Chaplin, Lucille Ball, Annie Fratellini, all of them do not look like clowns, but they're clowning all the time. There's not a moment in a Chaplin film or a Keaton film or W.C. Fields when they're not clowning, when they're not doing something that makes you go, whoa, that surprised me.
Yeah, that's really amazing insight. So that actually links to a question here, which Pan put, which was, who are your main sources of inspiration? You've just mentioned a few. Do you have any?
So many. Lecoq, of course, was my major inspiration. George Carl is always an inspiration. I remember the day that I was visiting my first run in Chicago, and Jay Marshall had come to the show, and I was over at the shop one day, and he said something about George Carl. I said, who's that? I'd never heard of him. He said, oh my God. Took me in the back room and put in a tape of George Carl. And it was one long wow through his whole act. I was fortunate to get to know George, to count him as a friend, and to work with him a couple of times. Amazing. And I was so glad, was so happy that I hadn't seen him before, because it would have closed so many doors. I was in a show that the San Francisco New Vaudeville Festival, and there was a show of Jeff Hoyle, Bill Irwin,
Larry Pizzoni,
me, and George Carl.
Oh my, that's amazing.
And somebody came backstage, and I was sitting there with Bill and Jeff and Larry. They stuck their head and said, so which one of you stole more material from George?
Well, it is like that, isn't it? It's like you've seen everything he does. It's like you've seen it before, because it came from him in the first place.
Well, certainly in terms of film, he's an original source, but he got it from somewhere too.
Of course.
But one has to be careful not to steal material, but to allow yourself to be inspired, to really take the concept, the principle, and then apply it to your set of skills.
I mean, that microphone sort of shtick that he does is just extraordinary. It just watch it over and over.
He can go on for 20 minutes. He can do it for 3 minutes.
Yeah. I can never quite figure out if it's improvised or if it's really tightly structured. I just can't tell.
Right. Yeah.
It's amazing, because it's so precise. Like the moments, the knocks, the bumps, the way it all gets tangled and then suddenly is
misses.
Yeah.
I've never seen it miss. I've seen him do it at a fancy nightclub, the Crazy Horse, and I saw him do it in a circus ring.
It's amazing. And of course, if you show, I find that if I show people that, it immediately inspires them, not to steal that, but to apply it, because you can so easily sort of take that idea and apply it to whatever the skill or it's a very clear objective, right? It's exactly what you were saying earlier. It's the objective is.
He just wants to play his harmonica.
Yeah.
And things happen.
Yeah.
So you have to come on stage with an objective. For example, in my show, I come on stage to sweep the stage. If nothing happens, I will sweep the stage and I can go home early. But something always happens. So in rehearsal, the writer part of our brain makes sure that things happen that we have to go, oh, that's interesting. I've got.
And how much do unexpected things happen during your performances, Avner? Or is it pretty tightly choreographed, or are you? How much are you improvising?
Not much. I mean, occasionally I'll get an idea and try something, and if it works out, I'll keep it in. But even that's rare. But the art is in hiding the technique. We want it to look like the whole thing is improvised.
Yeah, which it does. Yeah, beautiful. I'm gonna, let's see. Oh, Dan says, this is an interesting question. How has your clowning, I know you don't like that word, but let's say, how is your
clowning?
How has your comedic performance changed over time? Has it changed?
I got kinder and gentler. When I first started, it was very heavily reliant on the technique, and I was a young man, and I could do those things. I think as I aged, like that Gouda cheese from Holland, I matured and mellowed, and the show got funnier.
Interesting.
It wasn't about, see, one of the problems of technique-based shows, juggling, magic, acrobatics, contortion, the basic attitude is I can do this and you can't, therefore you should watch me.
Right.
And I think basically people don't want to spend much time with a person like that. If you want to move past the 10-minute variete act, which is just full of wow, stunts, you've got to find a way. You've got to find a different attitude, and the one that's most interesting, when you can find it, is when the techniques are the solution to the problem, rather than just showing off the technique.
Right. Would you say is that true of your slack rope?
Oh yeah, just hang my laundry up.
Yeah, of course. That's the sort of the blow off at the end, really, isn't it? That's the punchline.
Yeah, exactly.
I noticed in that piece that you're wearing a nose, which is interesting because I don't think you've done that for quite a long time now.
No, it's been, oh God, probably 30 years since I wore a nose. It was an absolute revelation. I remember the day Lecoq came and put one on each of us at the school. And it was an even bigger revelation when I took it off. Even when I was on Broadway, as the first solo clown to play a one-man show on Broadway, the reviewers would say, bring the kids to this show. There's such baggage attached to the red nose and the idea of the clown. And I was trying so hard to be a sophisticated clown for adults. So I decided I would try the show without the nose. So first thing that happened, I forgot that I was going to do that. And I came on stage with the nose and then took it off, and I had it on elastic and I shot it off into the wings. And then I finished the show. Well, I got to the part in the napkin eating routine where I would take a napkin and just pull it on my face. I'd cut 2 eyes, and it made an instant mask with a red nose, which was a poster for the longest time.
Yeah.
And it's the end of the napkin eating, which is the denouement of the show.
Right.
And I went, I'm screwed. I can't, it won't stay on without the nose. So stop, all this magic stuff happening that I had to deal with. All around on the floor, under the pin rail, cigarettes and gum wrappers, found the nose, put it on, finished the show. Then I discovered that I could get they're really glasses like these and a nose like this, one of those Groucho glasses, and I put it on over the napkin, and it works just fine. So 2 things happened. Some friends came to see the show, and I said afterwards, so what do you think? And they went, what do you mean? I said, I'm not wearing the nose. They went, really? They hadn't noticed.
Yeah.
Number 2, the newspapers immediately started talking about the existential journey of the character, the poetry of the show. So it was for me, it was a good move.
You like that, yeah.
Oh yeah. You know, there's a name for the red nose of a drunk. It's called a grog blossom.
How have I never heard that before?
I hadn't either. I just found that. But the history of the red nose is very interesting.
Grog blossom, I love that.
Yeah.
Yes. Do you want to tell us the history of the red nose?
I'd be happy to. Thanks for asking. There's a bit of a long story. You up for this?
Yeah, please. We're all up for it.
Well, the reason it's a long story is we have to look back to the middle of the 1800s. Now, you know that the modern circus was born in the 1700s by, God, what's the guy's name? I keep forgetting it. Someone will know. It was an English guy. It was an equestrian show.
Yeah, a major in the army, wasn't he? He was Astley, Philip Astley.
Astley, that's it. That was it. But even going back to ancient Rome, the diameter of the circus ring today is exactly the same as it was, as far as I can tell, going all the way back to Rome, because it's what gave a horse the most steady gait when people were doing stunts on top of the horses.
Yeah.
So before the middle of the 1800s, nothing on earth moved faster than a horse could walk.
Right.
Why? Because the steam engine was invented in mid-1800s. And with the steam engine came the factory powered by steam. Before that, there weren't any engines that you could use to run a factory. You had to have a blacksmith and a cooper and a wheelwright in every little village. This was the first time things could be moved. And the population was not centered in cities. You read accounts of London in the 1700s. It was a cesspool. It was horrible. It was raw sewage in the streets. No, the people were centered on little family farms. And the engine that ran the farm was the horse. So people knew horses. And every kid knew you don't stand up on the back of a horse. And they all had broken arms to prove it. So here come these little traveling circuses. And what's the first circus? It's a horse show. Now, we got to go back again to these family farms. There was a character that was prevalent in those days who was a kind of an itinerant farm worker. The family was the unit, the extended family, all living in these kind of communes. And there was a character who didn't have a family. He was a single man. He was an itinerant farm worker. He was uneducated. He was unwashed, but he was clever. He could fix anything. And he would show up and live with the family and work for a couple of weeks and then move on to the next farm. And this was a character that everyone knew. He was much beloved, even though he was marginalized from our families. Now we need to look, going back a little bit to Carlo's question, we know from the study of drama that we need one character, at least one character with whom we can have empathy. Empathy means we feel what the character's feeling, different from sympathy, where we understand what they're feeling, but we don't feel it. Now, the circus is the world of the virtuoso. People stand up on horses. They do acrobatics on the back of galloping horses. They climb 30 feet in the air and walk on a little tightrope. They go in a cage full of lions. When a circus performer shows up in their beautiful costume and says, I'm going to go into this cage of lions, we say, fine, go ahead. We're happy to watch, but we don't feel what they're feeling.
Right.
So they developed this character who really looked like one of these farm workers. He was dressed like a farm worker. All clothing, you couldn't go to a clothing store in those days. Everything was homespun. Everybody's clothing was gray and brown, except for rich people who could afford colorful clothing. So this guy got his hand-me-downs from the family. He went to the town dump. That's where he'd find a nice coat that was all torn, and he could use it to make patches. And he would show up. A character who looked like one of these farm workers would come wandering into the ring. And that would grab the people emotionally. They'd go, oh, no, don't, you'll kill yourself. Now, this guy obviously had a lack of inhibition, or he wouldn't walk into the ring, but he was one of us. There's an us and them with the virtuosos of the circus. He had a certain lack of inhibition. And the substance that takes away inhibition in our culture is alcohol. And the red nose, the grog blossom, is the symbol of the alcoholic. And that is why clowns wear red noses. Now, I know it's not true, but it's what I believe.
Yes.
The costume.
Beautifully told.
We've already talked about the raggedy costume, which is very much where the Arlecchino costume came from.
Yeah.
And the big shoes. You ask clowns, why do you wear big shoes? They say, well, clowns wear big shoes. You say, yeah, but why? They don't know. Because these farm workers would get their shoes at the town dump too, and they were always too big. And there's the picture of the clown, the red nose, the hat that's either too big or too small, the patched clothing, and the big shoes. So that to me speaks to the image of the clown, but also the psychological necessity of the clown.
Yeah.
Because the clown, while the virtuosos do things that cannot be done, the clown does things that should not be done.
Crossing boundaries.
Yeah. So that's why we wear red noses.
That's beautiful. And I love that narration. And of course, that figure was has been reinvented numerous times, right? With the Auguste in Europe in the sort of mid-19th century.
I think it was reinvented. I think it's a straight line. What I don't understand is what primary colors and polka dots have to do with clowning.
Interesting. So is that a reference to sort of modern circus clown looks?
Yeah, and not even circus clowns so much as sort of parade clowns.
Yeah. And that's where you get into what you were mentioning earlier about the difference between a clown and clowning.
That's right.
We could see a clown, but they might not be clowning. And we could see a person who doesn't look like a clown, but they are clowning.
That's right. And with this character comes that sense of cleverness, that sense of calmness.
Yeah. And I think a kind of sense of like resilience against the odds, right? That they will just sort of keep going.
Yeah.
Which is a very positive, optimistic outlook, as you said.
Absolutely.
Earlier. Yeah.
It's not about failure.
No, or unless you start to look at failure differently, perhaps. I mean, I think there is a case for speaking about failure differently as well. I think the failure is decredited, is sort of devalued.
There's a presupposition in neurolinguistic programming. There is no failure. There's only feedback.
Right.
So when you hit what looks like failure, if you fall back, and it really helps to say in your mind, interesting, you can find a solution.
Yeah. I think this is beautiful when I do clowning sometimes with kids, which is quite hard. But the wonderful thing about it is that I think kids in schools these days are not taught about the value of getting something wrong and being interested in a problem and enjoying it even when you get it wrong and trying again. And if you look at any successful scientist or inventor, how many hundreds of times they had to fail, to get
Well,
the
the whole
one.
scientific process is you do something and everyone else tries to disprove it. If they can't, then it becomes accepted.
Yeah. So clowns are scientists on one level, inventors.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. I love that. Ella says, tips for daydreaming in this digital age when phones are designed to steal your attention. Do you have any tips for daydreaming in this digital age, or anything to do with surviving? You've done pretty well. You've gone online with your teaching.
Yeah. It's and it was a big surprise that it worked. The first one was right when COVID hit, and there was a workshop in Los Angeles that was ready to go, and they called one day and said, we can't do it. I said, yeah, I can't fly there either. They said, well, why don't you do something online? I said, there's no way we can teach clowning online. Said, well, why don't you do something? And I taught a 4-session class based on the eccentric principles.
Yeah.
And that morphed into the 6-session pedagogy. And I've been teaching ever since. I've had 2 of them going simultaneously, 2 groups of 12, maximum 12. We meet for 6 weeks, 2 hours a week, and people send in videos. They get an assignment every week to do a little clowning number and send the video. If they get it in early enough, they get comments back.
Yeah.
And then they can redo it. The people that are the go-getters will sometimes do 3 or 4 versions.
Yeah.
Boy, it's exciting to see the progress. I think it's an advantage over live workshops where usually you've got a bigger group, anywhere from 14 to 30. And you see every exercise once and you never see it again. So this is an opportunity to take the principles that we've been studying and apply them in a performance situation. So we learn to make little videos for the camera.
And is that...
I was just going to say, I've had 300 students from 34 different countries, which would not have been possible live.
Right. Which is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, I've become a multinational small cottage industry.
That's so great. And how do you enjoy it? Do you enjoy teaching online?
I do, very much. It's been not only my major professional activity, because I haven't done a show in 2 years. It's also my major social contact. Right. I really come to love these groups of students, and it's always sad to say goodbye. In fact, I'm planning a level 2, which will be either 4 or 6 sessions that'll be available only to the people that already took the level 1. So I'm working on that.
Wonderful. Well, and if folks are listening now, or when they watch the replay of this and you're interested in working with Avner, what's the website, Avner, for the
Avner The Eccentric.com.
Beautiful. We just put that into the feed here so that people can even...
Great. Gail asked an interesting question. How can you clown without trick skills? The first assignment is to do an ordinary thing in an unordinary way. That's the first assignment. And I give a couple of examples. And one is this 2-second shoe tie, which is fantastic. Another is a 2-second t-shirt fold. To start collecting things like that and start developing skills, but you don't need high-level skills. I'm fascinated with origami, and where do I have this? Do I have it here? It's in the other room. They're on my webpage. If you look at origami, you'll find 3. There's a fantastically realistic rose made out of toilet paper. And you make one of those for someone and they go, whoa, because it looks like you're just mucking around with toilet paper. There's another one, a little butterfly that flaps its own wings. And there's a little magician's top hat folded out of a $1 bill and a rabbit jumps out of it. So
And of course, once you've got the skill, then it's about, you know, the build up to that, to the demonstration of that skill.
It's not even the build up, it's the creation of rapport.
Okay. Yeah. And would you say that, actually, I wanted to ask you about this, right? When you mentioned that a while ago, to what extent is that creation of rapport about eye contact? Because I think some clown teachers teach that it's really about eye contact. Is it about that for you, or is there something quite different?
But I mean, maybe if you work with very small groups, but if you work in a theater, you never see the audience. No, it's about breath. And it's about an understanding of, well, another story.
Please.
I've been teaching clowning, physical comedy, for 35 years. And I've watched students all over the world do clowning numbers that were not funny, that should have been. And I realized that the basic emotion they were communicating was fear. And one might think, oh yeah, fear of failure, but it's not that kind of fear. This was personal fear. So this became a 20-year research project, and I started asking students, and I'll ask all of you, what's your basic emotional state before you walk on stage? And the answer has come down to, I hope it doesn't suck. How many of us have some anxiety about performing? Then came Lecoq always talked about the mask and the counter mask. He would take the same mask and show two diametrically opposed emotions with the same mask. And I've always loved that concept. So I thought, wow, we've got performers who are afraid. What's the audience thinking? What's your basic emotional state when you're in the audience? When you're a teacher and someone sent you a video and you go, oh, better look at this. And the answer is exactly the same. I hope it doesn't suck. So we've got two groups of people, the performers and the audience. They're terrified of each other.
Well, as an audience member, I have to say that's often my attitude in any show. I hope this doesn't suck.
Yeah, especially with clowning, because you've been there. So then I started thinking, well, okay, what is it we're afraid of? And what I realized is that we're terrified of not being interesting. When we walk on stage, our whole being is saying, I hope you like this. Instead of saying, I like this, and you can join me. And that is all revealed in the breath, and particularly the exhaling. We have a saying at the Eccentric workshop, everyone needs to breathe all the time, even when you're on stage.
And interestingly, the nose can sometimes obstruct breath. I find in workshops, which is sometimes a good thing because it gets people to open their mouths and breathe through the mouth.
Well, I think that's probably not a good thing. From what I've read about breathing, it's better to breathe through your nose all the time.
For health purposes, yeah. Yes. So do you have, I'm sure you do, but as I've never taken a workshop, I don't know how this looks, specific exercises that you teach that help people to learn and understand a good way to breathe on stage? Absolutely.
Oh yeah, we spend a lot of time talking about working on breathing. One of the interesting things about breathing is that it is primarily a subconscious activity. We are almost never aware of our breathing until you become aware of it. And the way the body reacts to stress is to hold tension up here. Even though you're still breathing in and out, you've got this big inhale that happened and you never let go of it. And that's the body going into freeze, fight, or flight, which is our basic interface with the world. So I've added an F to that because you come on stage and I hope you like this, and you never let it go. And what we find then is you got freeze, fight, or flight, or fidget. When you don't let go of it, your body wants to be somewhere else. You ever see people do this, shifting their weight back and forth?
Oh, yeah.
I remember recently a student did a thing. They shifted their weight 9 times in 2 seconds. And we're not aware that they were doing it.
Yeah, unconscious movement.
Absolutely. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the body saying, I'd really rather be any place else on earth than on this stage. And the conscious mind is going, shut up. We paid money for this workshop. This is funny. And then the little voice in the back says, where'd you ever get that idea? Get me out of here. I told you I didn't want to do this. And in fact, if you don't get me out of here, I'm going to make your hands start sweating. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to make you nauseous. And that little voice can do that. So we need to work around that.
And breath is the solution. Breath is the answer.
It's absolutely the key to that.
How did you learn that, Avner? Was that through practice, or was it a specific technique you were taught?
It's really a mixture of things, starting with 2 wonderful teachers at the Lecoq School, Alberto Vidal and Pierre Chausset, who taught breathing in an acrobatics class. Lecoq taught a lot about relationship of breathing to movement. And that opened up an awareness. I practice Aikido, which does a lot with breath. And I've been thinking about it for a long time. So it's a lot of things came into it.
Yeah.
Understanding that that's where you see the body relax when it finally lets go of that tension, which it doesn't know it has.
There's a very interesting question here from something I was going to actually ask you anyway, from Chad. Do you know Chad? Who I think you do. Maybe he has the Red Nose Factory. He makes wonderful noses, which I'm going to do a quick plug for Chad's red noses. Here they are.
Oh, beautiful.
Very nice. With this kind of interesting design. This thing that attaches.
Yeah, he made the Julie Goel nose.
Yeah.
Oh, hi.
Yeah.
I think it really depends, and I can't answer that except to say I'd like to see what you're doing. Depends what you're saying, how you're saying it, and what your physicality is. So if you want to send me a little video, I'd be happy to look at it.
Oh, there's an offer. I was going to ask you, Avner, if you've ever used your voice or talked in clown or in your performance.
I've done Waiting for Godot twice. Once as Istragan, once as Vladimir.
So you probably had to talk for that.
I was in the Comedy of Errors at Lincoln Center, and you can see some bits of it linked on my website. Julie and I did a show where I did a 2-hour monologue called The Zoo of Tranquility about man's sometimes disastrous relationship to machines. So yeah, I talk. I don't talk in my show. There's nothing to say. There's nothing in the show where talking would be more efficient. And often people aren't aware that I'm not talking. I've had people come up, boy, I loved it when you said so and so.
I didn't say it. I love that. You're just communicating so effortlessly and clearly through other medium.
No, it's very complicated to look simple.
Speaking of Julie, there was a question on the Facebook post from Joyce. She said, if appropriate, I'd like to know how he met Julie and any stories about ways they worked together and supported each other's creative work, which is a question I'm interested in too.
Yeah, Julie and I met. We nearly met a couple of times. but didn't. And then
You persisted like a good clown.
I was after the Broadway run and The Jewel of the Nile, which was a film that I was in. I developed severe tendonitis and couldn't work for 11 months. And I decided to go down to Key West to hang out with friends who were performing at Mallory Square. And we stopped I was with a magician friend of mine who's also was a street performer at the time. And we stopped in Orlando and with a Masaji, who is the Japanese candy sculptor at Epcot. I had worked at Epcot when it first opened. And we stopped and spent the night with Masaji. And it turned out to be Christmas Day. Irrelevant to us. My friend is Jewish. That's just when we met in Atlanta and drove down in his van. And he said, "Oh, there was a Christmas party last night. You missed it. It's at Julie's house." And Julie was with a group called I Giuliari, the Piazza, an Italian group. And we went over the next day just to catch the leftovers from the party. And then we got married.
Beautiful. I love it. And you have worked together, because I think you mentioned that earlier on in.
Yeah, we were really each other's best director. And we did we were both in a show called Ghetto. That was an interesting experience. It was the Ghetto in Vilnius when the Nazis, it was sort of like Theresienstadt, where they decreed that the Jews had to have a theater company. And I played Srulik, who was a ventriloquist. He was a real guy. He's the only person who survived. And he was a 2-bit vaudevillian of the time. They made him a ventriloquist in the show, and I had to learn ventriloquism for this, which was, I think, the hardest thing I've ever learned. My dummy was nominated for a Tony Award.
Well, it just goes
so
to show.
We were both in that. We did the Zoo of Tranquility together, and that you can see, there's a tape of it on my website. You can see me and Julie working together. Yeah.
So it's been a very productive, creative partnership, it sounds like, over the years.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Jamie says, you may know Jamie Wood.
Not by name, but if I saw him, I might.
Yeah.
Where do we know each other from, Jamie?
Well, he's just been around a lot in the sort of comedy and fringe kind of circuit. He has a beard a bit like yours, actually. So, and he says, how important is it for you that the audience laugh?
I'll tell you a little story. A friend of mine came to the show with his sister who had never seen it. He's an old friend. And I'm not exaggerating. He sat in the second row like this, the entire show. Later that summer, we were hanging out. He lives here on the island. He said, "Oh, I got to tell you, my sister is still talking about the show. She loved it. And I don't think I've ever laughed that hard. I've seen it 6 or 7 times. I never laughed that hard." And I realized something about laughter, that it's something that's on the inside. And he was laughing. He was absolutely laughing. It's something you do inside. I don't care if they laugh. I'd rather have them go, "Wow." In rapport, going, "Whoa." I'm not laughing. I don't need them to. They do. Once they relax, because a laugh is an involuntary exhale. So it's the response to solving a problem. You see the problem and you hold it, and if it gets solved precipitously, they go right off the cliff, and the air comes out. Tell you another funny story. I did a show in Maine. People are very dry up here, and there was an old couple sitting in the same second row, and I swear they look like Grant Wood's American Gothic. Like this the whole show.
Yeah.
I was out in the lobby chatting with people after the show. They came hobbling over. She came over. She was so nice. She put her hands on my arm. She said, "Young man, I got to tell you, that was the funniest show I have ever seen." And I said, "Oh, thank you." And then her husband said, "Yep, it was all I could do to keep from laughing."
That's good. It's putting so much effort into avoiding that.
Yeah, yeah. You
That's
can't
beautiful.
worry if you go on stage. So here's the thing. Someone asked me once, "What do you do when they don't laugh?" And I had a real epiphany. And the answer is, thank God. I've got enough problems on stage without people laughing at me. The laugh then becomes an interruption, what you're trying to do. And you have to deal with the interruption. If you go on stage expecting laughs and don't get them, you're dead.
Yeah.
But if you go on stage to sweep the stage and nobody laughs, you can go home early.
Yeah. And yeah, I think there's too much, or there is a lot of focus on laughter in a lot of clown teaching and technique. You know, there's this exercise which is a lot of clown teachers do, I think, where you kind of you come on and you can't do anything or move until there's some laughter. And there's a laugh, you can take a step or you can do the next action. And if they don't, then you'll sort of have to be in the shit. And if you acknowledge the lack of laughter, you get a laugh, and then you can move.
I address that exercise. People hate it, by the way. Take a poll sometime. We used to use that exercise, and people we had a 5-day workshop. By the third day, half the workshop was in tears. When I started teaching clowning, because I used to just teach this kind of Lecoq method. When I started teaching clowning, I made a pact with myself to teach only what I know. And I never do that. Why would I ask you to do it? It makes people extremely uncomfortable, both the audience and you don't get a good laugh. And you work so hard. One of my favorites is trust exercises. You ever do that? You fall over backwards and people, the hell? What does that have to do with clowning? I never do that on stage, nor would I.
Right.
And then they tell you to be creative. Let them fall. That would be creative.
I think it would be a good one to do online, on an online workshop, falling backwards. Trust that someone will catch you.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm a big fan of not doing that exercise. In fact, I teach the opposite. I say you need to come on stage with anticipation and expectation. Create rapport with the audience and get on with your job. And then you get the laughs. That's just it's just what I believe.
No, it's beautiful. I love it. Avner, I would love to keep talking to you, but we've gone 10 minutes over the hour already, and I'm really really grateful for your time and your wisdom and sharing all of this with us. And it's really just scratching the surface. So
it's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. And I would like to just repeat to folks out there that, you know, that Avner has lots of courses coming up, and go and check out that website I put in the comments and get into one of those courses, because I've heard amazing things from all kinds of people who've taken those courses. And I'm extremely, I would love to take one myself. So maybe I will.
That would be a pleasure.
Yeah. One of the problems about talking to all these people is that I sort of fall in love with them, and then I want to take their courses, and unfortunately I can't take them all. So it's been a beautiful, delightful pleasure talking to you, Avner, and meeting you finally. And I hope this won't be the last time. I hope we can talk again.
I hope so. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
nice seeing all of you without seeing you.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. Avner, stick around for a minute or two because I'm going to end the broadcast and then we can just chat for 2 minutes.
I'll tell you what I really think.
Yeah. So thanks everybody. Next week I'm going to be talking to Hilary Chaplin, who is a wonderful friend and clown, and we'll be talking to her. So thanks for tuning in this week, and that's it for another Clownversation. Bye bye from me. Bye bye from Avner. Farewell.